So good to see everyone. Welcome to the Sunday morning class offered by IMCW, Insight Meditation Community Washington, and the Center for Mindful Living, part of IMCW. And great to see everyone. Great to be with you all. So just if anyone is new, I mean, I've said hi to folks who'd arrived, but good to see everyone here, Karimera and Tony and Kisho and Cynthia, Diane, welcome everyone. So hard times in the world, difficult times we're living through, and I was sharing a little informally beforehand that the theme of today's session is cultivating joy, and it kind of might feel a little incongruous or kind of out of step with where we are in the world, but it's in difficult times I think perhaps we need joy more than ever. So I'm gonna share some reflections on that today, and I'm gonna divide this into two talks, and we'll do the second one next time I'm here. I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks teaching retreats, but begin the talk today on joy. And as we're beginning, just want to welcome everyone. I hope your week has been going well. I hope you've been able to experience some joy in your life, maybe moments of well-being, moments of appreciation. It's good to be with you. For those who are maybe joining us for the first time, if there is anyone, we'd love to have you share in the chat, that who you are and where you're joining us from. And if you're new, with the format of the class is very straightforward. We normally begin with a meditation, and we'll do that today, maybe 20 minutes or so, kind of helping us arrive and create a space in the dense forest of our lives to open to whatever is present, open our hearts, and then we'll have a talk, hopefully kind of half an hour or so, maybe 25-30 minutes. Then Emily will lead us in some mindful movement. Thank you as always, Emily, for that, which is always a lovely part of our time. And then we'll do some sharing, either in the group, the full group, or in a small groups. And then we'll come together and have another shorter meditation and some announcements to finish. So again, everyone, good to be with you. And I was sharing earlier that the theme today is joy, and I was teaching a session earlier from 9 to 10 for my regular Insight Timer session, online session, and it was also on joy. And I was remarking that how joyful it made me feel to teach about joy. It was just a very, just a really, joy naturally arose. And so I hope today will be a time of joy for us, a time of being together and sharing, and and reflection on maybe the joy of the teachings and the joy of the practice. So let's begin with a sit. So if you'd like to take some moments to settle, find a comfortable posture. sitting in a way where you can be comfortable, be relaxed, at ease. You might let your eyes close if that's comfortable for you, and just let the attention come inward. Drop down into the body, feel the contact of your body with the surface beneath you, with your chair or your cushion. Invite the shoulders to relax. Let your chest be open so you can breathe easily. And you might consciously let your attention drop out of the thinking mode. Let's come down into the body. Feel the body. Come into that felt sense of being here. Maybe the feeling of pressure or warmth, tingling or pulsing. You might take a few longer, deeper breaths to help you settle, help you arrive more fully. Nice long deep in-breath, filling the lungs, filling the chest. And then releasing, long slow out-breath. Imagine you're letting go, releasing any stresses or cares or busyness from the day, from the week. Consciously letting go on the out-breath. As you breathe in, you energize the body and the mind. And as you breathe out, it's a natural relaxing, letting go. In your own time, letting the breath come back to its natural rhythm, or continuing to take some deeper breaths if that's helpful to you. Good to remember that we can come back to taking a deeper breath or two if we're stressed or if we're caught up in something. We can just remember, oh, here. Nice deep breath to relax again, calming the body and the mind. And you might consciously invite a smile to your face. It's inviting the eyes, the corners of the eyes and the corners of the mouth to come into the expression of a smile. You might think of somebody who makes you feel happy or joyful. Or maybe think about something you did that makes you feel good. Or something that happened that brought you joy. Invite the smile in. Let the smile come into the face, also the body as a whole. Maybe invite the smile down into the heart. Letting the smile be the kind of the attitude with which you meet the day, your experience, life. Meeting your experience with the expression of a smile. We might begin with another reflection on joy, with giving some attention to gratitude, to what we have to be thankful for in our lives. You might just take some moments to think about things that you are grateful for. Maybe people in your life, family members, friends, loved ones. You could silently say to yourself, I'm grateful for, the person or the thing or the situation. You might think of conditions that make life easier for you, more joyful, happier, things that you appreciate. It might be a measure of good health. Could be some measure of financial well-being, security that helps you lessen the stress of life. Be just the beauty of nature, the wonder of the wild world, birds and the animals, trees, flowers, plants. I'm grateful for. Grateful for cherry blossoms, red buds, squirrels, whatever it is that opens your heart, warms your heart, brings joy to you. The teachings, the practices of happiness, of joy. I'll share a short reflection from Jack Cornfield, his book on forgiveness, loving kindness, and peace. He says, gratitude is a gracious acknowledgement of all that sustains us, a bow to our blessings, great and small, an appreciation of the moments of good fortune that sustain our life every day. We have so much to be grateful for. Gratitude is confidence in life itself. In it, we feel how the same force that pushes grass through cracks in the sidewalk invigorates our own life. Gratitude gladdens the heart. It's not sentimental, not jealous, nor judgmental. Gratitude does not envy or compare. Gratitude receives in wonder the myriad offerings of the rain and the earth, the care that supports every single life. As gratitude grows, it gives rise to joy. We experience the courage to rejoice in our own good fortune and the good fortune of others. So letting yourself open to whatever comes up for you as you reflect on gratitude. Allow yourself to feel any sense of joy or well-being that might arise, or anything that comes up. Meet it with kindness and with acceptance. Whatever arises, whatever comes up. I'll share this. This is Jack's reflection continuing. This is a kind of prayer or blessing of gratitude. It says, with gratitude, I remember the people, animals, plants, insects, creatures of the sky and sea, air and water, fire and earth, all whose joyful exertion blesses my life every day. With gratitude, I remember the care and labor of 1,000 generations of elders and ancestors who came before me. I offer my gratitude for the safety and well-being I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the blessings of this earth I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the measure of health I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the family and friends I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the community I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the teachings and lessons I have been given. I offer my gratitude for the life I have been given. Let yourself open to whatever is present, whatever's arising in the heart, in the body, in the mind. Meeting whatever's here with kindness and with acceptance. in these final few minutes of the meditation, just let this gratitude move into joy. If the mind is inclined in that direction, we invite you to bring to mind someone you care about, someone who it's easy to wish joy for, rejoice in. You might bring them to mind. You might let their image come up before you in your heart and your mind, and reflect on how they care for their own well-being, and how you naturally wish them joy, wish them happiness, success. You might just send this wish, this intention, may you be joyful. May your happiness and joy increase. May you be joyful. May your good fortune and the causes for your joy and happiness increase. You might invite in others, loved ones, dear friends, people you care about. You might invite in everyone here together, wishing each person joy and happiness. May you be joyful. May you be joyful. May your happiness increase. May you not be separated from great happiness. Just letting your wishes, your intentions go outward, out into the world. Maybe including those who are suffering, wishing them joy. May you be joyful. May your joy and happiness increase. May your good fortune and the causes for your joy and happiness increase. grow. This poem is by our friend Mary Oliver, Snow Geese. Oh, to love what is lovely and will not last. What a task to ask of anything or anyone. Yet it is ours, and not by the century or the year, but by the hours. One fall day I heard above me, and above the sting of the wind, a sound I did not know, and my look shot upward. It was a flock of snow geese, winging it faster than the ones we usually see, and being the colour of snow, catching the sun, so they were in part at least golden. I held my breath, as we do sometimes to stop time when something wonderful has touched us, as with a match which is lit and bright but does not hurt in the common way, but delightfully, as if delight were the most serious thing you ever felt. The geese flew on. I've never seen them again. Maybe I will someday, somewhere. Maybe I won't. It doesn't matter. What matters is that when I saw them as through the veil, secretly, joyfully, clearly. Just touching into whatever is present for you right now. Whatever may have come out of this time of meditation. Take it in and appreciate whether it was difficult, painful, or joyful, peaceful, however it was, however it is. Whatever comes out of the clearing into our open cupped hands. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world, so worthy of rescue. Take your time coming back into the group and the engaging realm. So I want to kind of move from the meditation into the reflection today. And I'm going to put on a timer. There we go. So I mentioned, I think I'm going to do part of this talk today and part the next time. And the theme is joy. Might be called Joy, a Path of Happiness Leading to the Deepest Happiness. So the theme today is joy. And I think if you asked the person in the street, as we do, what do you think Buddhism is about? I think probably most would say, well, it seems to be about suffering. It seems to be all about suffering. It's maybe they'd say, the Buddha taught that life is suffering. All of life is suffering. So just get used to it. Get over it. I don't know. I haven't actually stopped a cross section of people in the street to ask them, but that's my sense just from kind of the culture of the references. There's much more awareness of mindfulness, as we know, in recent years, but still kind of the Buddhist teachings have I still think have that sense of life is about suffering. But the truth is that while the teachings focus on suffering and its causes, the first two of the Noble Truths, the existence of suffering and the cause of suffering being clinging, that's only half of the picture. The other half of the picture is the third and the fourth Noble Truth, which are about freedom from suffering. So they're about peace, joy, the peace and the joy that come with the ending of suffering. So the Buddha said, I teach one thing, suffering and its end. So he didn't say, I teach one thing, suffering. He's saying suffering and its end. So, the two sides of that. He also said, I teach a path of happiness leading to the deepest happiness. So the path it's not as though the path is suffering and then we get to joy at the end of the path. The path itself is a path of happiness, even though, obviously we look at our own practice, we say, well, there's been quite a lot of struggle in there, a lot of suffering, a lot of dukkha, a lot of stuff, but the practice, if it really is all grim and dark and terrible, then maybe that's an indication that something needs to be looked at, that maybe there's a need for more joy and the more of the elements of joy and equanimity and peace to cultivate. Because the Buddha really talked about two, just as the first two Noble Truths.
Move it to the front room. That way they don't have to come.
Can you make sure you're all muted? Yeah, thanks. The first two Noble Truths and the second two Noble Truths, in the same way, if we break those down, the two basic instructions of our practice, it said, abandon the unskillful and cultivate the good. So both of those, abandon what leads to suffering, what leads to harm, what leads to unhappiness, and cultivate what leads to well-being, to joy, to happiness. So the Buddha's teachings ask us to open to suffering, to what's difficult, in order to see where we're clinging and how that's causing suffering. So there's no doubt that that's the case. But the path itself is a joyful one, inviting us to experience peace and joy, and other wholesome qualities that are available anytime that we're not caught up in stress and worry and fear and craving and other afflictive states. And the teachings point to the deepest freedom that's possible when we let go completely. I often come back to Ajahn Chah's quote, let go a little and you'll experience a little peace, a little joy. Let go a lot and you'll experience a lot of peace, a lot of joy. Let go completely and you'll experience complete freedom, complete peace, complete joy, the fullest joy possible. So joy is a fundamental part of the path, as well as being the end of the path. We could put it in other language. We could put it in the language of peace or well-being or freedom. But joy is an inherent part of it. We can experience it in the small, using Ajahn Chah's kind of saying, let go a little, let go a lot, let go completely. If we let go a little, I think there's a sense of maybe we just let go of a resentment we had towards somebody, and we can reflect on that. Say, oh, do I feel joy in that? Maybe as a sense of well-being, maybe a sense of joy, like, oh, I don't need to be caught up in that. Or maybe there's something bigger. Maybe there's somebody that we haven't forgiven for something they've done to us, and we're holding on to that. No, I can forgive other people, but never this person. They did this. And so we're holding on tight to it. And, as I've spoken about a lot before, we're the ones that suffer when we're caught up in those, they're this bad person, whether we do it about someone in our own life or a political figure or somebody on the world stage or whatever. The more we do that, the more we suffer. And so when we do let go, when there's forgiveness, for example, for somebody, maybe we've held on to a grudge or a blaming or judging for a long time, and there can be a feeling of like, oh, wow, certainly peace, calm, joy in that. And all of this points to the joy that naturally arises when we let go, when we let go completely. That's kind of what the path points to. So talking about joy, some of you, probably a number of you, are familiar with James Baraz, who teaches out at Spirit Rock out in California. And he's been teaching courses on joy for going on 20 years now. His course, Awakening Joy. First of all, it was in Berkeley and, an in-person class. And then it, long before the pandemic, became an online as well course. And thousands and thousands, probably tens of thousands now, people have done that course with him. Maybe some of you have. And his book that went with that, Awakening Joy, 10 Steps That Will Put You on the Road to Real Happiness. Wonderful, wonderful book, going into what supports joy and what gets in the way and how do we cultivate joy. And when he talks about joy, he says early on, what I'm calling joy is a general feeling of aliveness and well-being that is characterized by meeting the ups and downs of life with authenticity and perspective. So a feeling of aliveness and well-being characterized by meeting the exigencies of life, the changes of life, the ups and downs of life with authenticity and perspective. So it has that quality of feeling, it's a felt sense, something we experience and feel. James Baraz, B-A-R-A-Z, he, something that we feel, that we connect with in a very embodied way, typically in the body, in the heart, and the mind, but also it's connected with seeing things clearly. It's connected with being present. It's connected with a lot of wholesome qualities, that we really need to cultivate to help joy to arise. So, going back to the kind of the suffering joy antinomy, whatever the other another word for that, the kind of opposites, seeming opposites. In actual fact, the path to the end of suffering and the path to joy is the same path. I mean, it's not two different paths. It's, we may emphasize more abandoning unskillful states at some times, and others we may focus more on the cultivation. For example, when we're cultivating the Brahma Viharas, the beautiful qualities of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Other times we may be much more wrestling with, how do I let go of this clinging that I have? But there really are two sides of the same coin. Just as when we're abandoning clinging, and when we see, oh, I'm holding on to this blaming or this judgment, and I'm the one that's really suffering here. When we see that clearly and we let go, joy can naturally arise in that. And when we cultivate joy in a more intentional, conscious way, then it leaves much less space for dukkha to come up, for suffering to come up, for clinging to come up. Because the more we fill our hearts and our minds with joy, with happiness, the more that becomes our default, the less space there is for getting hooked onto suffering, to getting caught back up in blame and shame and judgment and hatred and craving. It's not that they won't arise, but they have less of a hook, less of a purchase on us than they would if we didn't cultivate these wholesome qualities of heart and mind. I was thinking that if the Buddha were around today, marketing advisors might well say to him, don't focus so much on the suffering part, emphasize the joy, because people are looking for joy, Don't tell them about heavy things and bad things, So anyway, the Buddha, I'm not sure how seriously he'd take that if he were around today, but it really is a kind of an emphasis thing, and the emphasis certainly has come down to us as suffering, but that's not the truth of it. The truth is that yes, we need to work to let go of suffering. And part of that working to let go of suffering, of kind of letting go, is the cultivation of these beautiful states like joy. And joy is a very, very, very central one. I don't know if you know, but the Buddha's followers at the time were known as the happy ones. The happy ones. They were living on alms, without what we associate with security. All they had, we have our houses, we have our whatever, we have all the things, mostly, hopefully, many of us, we have those kinds of support. But here the nuns and the monks, the monastic community the Buddha set up, lived they had their begging bowl, they had their robes, and they had their medications, to need for, to stay as healthy as they could. And that's basically, somewhere to lay their heads, just to, keep out of the rain and the cold, etc. But they didn't have anything else, and yet they were truly joyful. There's a lovely quote in Mark Epstein's book, The Trauma of Everyday Life. I'm just going to read a little of, he says he says there's a lot of he talks about the happiness being an important part of the path, and he talks about the Buddhist teachings. He says in one of the Buddhist teachings, there's a story about a conversation between the Buddha and the king of Kosala, one of the kingdoms where the Buddha roamed and taught. Why is it that your followers seem so different from those of other teachers and sects? This king wanted to know. You emphasize the inescapability of dukkha, suffering, the truth of suffering, and yet your monks look so full of life. The followers of other religions look, and I quote here, haggard, coarse, pale, emaciated, and unprepossessing, the king went on. while your disciples are joyful, quoting again, joyful, elated, jubilant, and exultant. They even seem light-hearted, the king continued, as if they have a gazelle's mind. Apparently gazelles have very, very clear minds, light-hearted minds. And so the Buddha actually answered the question, why are they so radiant? And he said, because they don't dwell on the past and all that's gone by. They don't lean forward into the future with anticipation or expectation. And because they're not preoccupied or obsessed with anything in the present, this is why they are so radiant. So it's because, they're not fixated on the past, the future, or even anything that's going on right now, that they're so happy. So their happiness, their joy, comes from the letting go of those kind of fixations, those kind of that kind of suffering that we get caught up in. So the joy that the Buddha emphasized and taught wasn't the joy that's linked with getting pleasant things or experiencing sense pleasures. The joy he pointed to was a joy that comes from letting go of clinging, a joy that doesn't depend on conditions, but what he called a non-sensual joy. It's not coming from, oh, this ice cream tastes really great. Not that we shouldn't enjoy the taste of the ice cream, but not to get hooked on it, not to think that our happiness is really going to come from great taste, great experiences, because they'll all end. They're very ephemeral. They won't last. And if we try and hold on to them, we'll suffer. So what the Buddha was pointing to was a happiness, a different kind of happiness. Not that we shouldn't enjoy the everyday pleasures, just don't get hooked on them, but to really give attention to the joy that comes from cultivating qualities like gratitude, as we were doing earlier, like generosity, like compassion, like mindfulness. We've got to be present in order to be joyful. We can't be joyful in the future. I mean, if we are joyful in the future, it will be because we're experiencing joy in that moment. We're not experiencing it in the future or the past. We have to be completely here to know joy, to experience joy. The Buddha was also quoted saying, "What the world calls suffering, I call happiness. What the world calls happiness, I call suffering." The Buddha was pointing to a happiness that comes from letting go of clinging, comes even from renunciation. And that's another word that we don't renunciation. I have to let go of things I like, But he's really talking about a renunciation of addiction, renunciation of clinging, rather than we don't have to let go of we don't have to abandon, we don't have to stop having a car or a home or whatever, if we can hold it wisely and appropriately. So when we talk about cultivating joy, we come to one of the most important elements in the Buddha's teachings, and I think in any wisdom teaching, and that is that the mind can be trained. In cultivating joy, it's really predicated on the possibility that our mind and our heart can be trained through practice. If the mind and heart couldn't be trained through practice, then it wouldn't make any sense to try to train to cultivate joy. It'd be like, well, we're either joyful or we're not joyful. We either have it or we don't. Some people are joyful, some people aren't joyful. No. It's like any other quality we can, just as we think, oh, I'm an angry person or I'm a fearful person. And what that means really is that that's the quality or qualities that we've cultivated. We've given our attention in those areas, and that's what's arisen. We've sown those seeds, and that's what we're reaping. We've, for whatever reason, whatever the conditions were, we have an angry view about people, or a judging view about them. Oh, they were always like this. They were always doing this. Or we judge ourselves, and we've cultivated those qualities. They're not essential to who we are, but we can. So the question for us, the Buddha says we can train, the mind can be trained. Nothing can do us more harm than an untrained mind. Nothing can do us more good than a trained mind. We can train our mind. If you couldn't train your mind, I wouldn't ask you to do it, the Buddha said. If it caused harm, I wouldn't ask you to do it. But because it leads to well-being, I say, train the mind, cultivate the mind. And that speaks to joy, as well as to other wholesome qualities, compassion, gratitude, loving kindness, generosity, that we can cultivate it. And that's, I think, one of the, the most inspiring things about the Dharma practice, Dharma teachings, and other wisdom teachings as well, that these hearts and minds can be trained. Joy arises naturally. We know it in our own lives. We see it in, when we see a child, we see the natural delight and joy in a child of seeing something for the first time, enjoying something for the first time, playing in a way that's, that is just an expression of joy, just of like, hopefully we can all remember that from our childhood, maybe even if it isn't as accessible today as it was then. I remember on a Saturday when I didn't have a football game, a soccer game, I'd go and climb up on in a tree. It was a big tree, and its branches were as big as the trunk of most trees. And I would walk along these branches. I balanced, and it wasn't like 50 foot down, but maybe 5 or 10 feet. Enough of a drop to be careful, but I would spend like 2 or 3 hours there, and looking back, it was just an experience. I was on my own. I wasn't lonely, and I was safe, but it was this experience of joy. When I think about it, it was like there was no cares in the world, really. It was just, and probably all of us in our own experiences, hopefully, I imagine people could have such terrible experiences of childhood that it would be really hard to find anything, but probably most can find something, things that, oh yeah, that's what joy feels like, and we can remember it, and when we really think about it, as we can do when we practice gratitude, we think, oh yeah, I can feel joy. I remember I think less so this season, but last season, probably because we were right in the middle of the pandemic, I just felt incredible joy, particularly with the red buds. And we have the red buds now as well here in our area. But, I remember them being particularly spectacular last year, and just the joy that came up with just looking at the red buds and listening to the cicadas, the 17-year cicadas, I have a 35-minute meditation of the cicadas at their height. It's really a good meditation, and just that whirring sound of, I found a lot of joy in those cicadas, like the cherry blossoms, they don't last for very long, and cicadas won't come back for 17 years, and who knows if we'll even be around in 17 years. That's a kind of a good mindfulness bell. So we all have access to joy, but most of us don't live in joy. We don't live in joy. If you think about it, how much and how often is joy available to you at this time in your life? And I just think it's such a powerful and useful reflection to think, oh, where does joy come up in my life? Hopefully, it comes up, it appears, maybe appears out of nowhere, something happens and surprises us. And that's lovely. And we can make it more fully part of our, of kind of the default of our heart and our mind by cultivating, by awakening joy. And so what I want to talk about, and I'm going to have to do the majority, the rest of this next time, what I want to really reflect on is how we can cultivate it. What are the qualities that really help joy to arise? Gratitude, we did some reflecting on gratitude in the meditation. Gratitude is one of the most powerful ways. Mindfulness, as I mentioned, if we're not present, we can't experience joy. So the more we cultivate being present, the more fully we're here, the more we can incline our mind towards joy. Other qualities, compassion, generosity is a wonderful way. Any way in which we let go of clinging. So what I want to focus on next time is how clinging and craving and getting caught up in these narrow, afflictive states of heart and mind, the judging harshly, the blaming, the anger, the craving, the wanting, the confusion, the being lost in confusion, delusion, sometimes mainly called in Buddhism. Those are things that get in the way. I kind of explore that more next time. And other qualities, there's my bell going off and I'm being diligent. So when we abandon, so afflictive qualities, getting caught up in dukkha, getting caught up in suffering, gets in the way of joy, makes it less accessible to us. And what makes it more accessible is inclining the mind towards qualities that help sow the soil, really, till the soil, really, for joy to more naturally arise. So what helps us, what makes it more difficult? Mindfulness, gratitude, generosity. I'll talk as well about sila. Sila meaning morality, ethics, virtue. Living wisely and compassionately creates the conditions for joy. It's sometimes called the bliss of blamelessness. It's a really beautiful, beautiful quality. Think of that, the bliss of blamefulness. I think you kind of get it, that when we're not hooked, when we're not tangled and hooked up in suffering, and that we're living in ways that we're not causing harm to ourselves or to others, the heart and the mind can be clear. We have nothing to feel guilty about, bad about. Oh, I did this terrible thing. If we're living skillfully in wise speech, wise action, wise livelihood, we're living kindly, with kindness and compassion and generosity, we're being grateful, we're cultivating these qualities of heart, then there really isn't room for blame to arise. Yes, we'll make mistakes. Yes, we'll get caught up for a while. But the more we cultivate these wholesome qualities of ethical qualities of virtue, the less tangled we'll be, and the more naturally joy will arise. So just to finish up, joy is always available to us by being present and really by orienting our hearts towards joy. What I'd like to leave us with is thinking about, what helps joy arise for you? What inclines your mind towards joy? Or what helps you incline your mind, move your mind in that direction? You can think of joy as being like being a habit, like other habits, a habit of worrying, a habit of judging, a habit of blaming. Those are the more afflictive habits. But we can have habits of being present, being mindful, being kind, being joyful. So what we're doing is we're inclining the mind in that direction rather than in the direction of suffering. And what we need to do that is really, we need to remember. We need to keep being present and choosing to move in that direction. And the more we do that, the more joy naturally arises in the mind and the heart. We're fueling it. It's like we're putting fuel on the fire to keep the fire going. But in fact, the mysterious kind of magical thing is we're burning the fuel, but it doesn't, it doesn't run out. It actually increases the capacity for joy the more we cultivate joy. Just as the more we cultivate loving kindness and compassion, equanimity, the more we do it, the more capacity we have to open our hearts in kindness and compassion. I've said before, it's not as though we can only open our heart to 25 people, and the 26th one is the straw that breaks the camel's back. No, I can't take in one more compassion to one more person. That's the illusion that we have in our mind when we're caught up in suffering. We can't take on the suffering of the people of Ukraine because I'm caught up in my own suffering, So the more we can cultivate these qualities, and particularly today, joy, the more joy, it kind of builds on itself exponentially. And the more joy becomes part of, the kind of default of our heart and our mind. Think of two very joyful human beings, Archbishop Desmond Tutu and His Holiness the Dalai Lama, their book of joy, and you can just see their faces when they were together, the joy they had in each other's company, and the playfulness and the humor are so much part of joy, and so I would encourage us, and I'm glad to do this in a couple of parts because it needs more attention. I mean, I think in the teachings, we incline more, and I include myself in this, probably incline more towards the dukkha side, the suffering side. And I like to certainly emphasize the heart qualities, but I don't think we can do it too much. We can't have too much emphasis on joy. So we'll continue to do that. So I'll leave it there for now. We'll invite Emily to lead us in some movement, and then we'll do some sharing together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hugh. I'm filled with joy. So I invite you all to just sway from side to side, shifting your weight. Maybe even lifting a heel and turning in the opposite direction, spreading out, thinking as if you were cultivating your own sense of being. And then come to center, open your arms out wide and lift them up to reach up. Exhale, soften your shoulders, dropping them down. Grasp your left wrist in your right hand and extend out to the right and tilt, opening up that left rib cage. You can always extend out a little bit more and soften, see what less effort achieves here. And come back to center. Switch wrists, extending out in the other direction to the left, opening up the right rib cage with a deep breath. Exhale, softening, lowering your shoulders. And come back to center. Float your arms down, roll your shoulders together. Energizing those wonderful joints. And roll them the other way. Now bring your arms up into cactus arms. Bit of shoulder work here. Keeping your elbows up, exhale, drop the hands down. Inhale, rise. Exhale, drop down. Inhale, rise. Last time down. And rise up. Extend your arms out. Take a look over at your left palm, flipping it up, keeping the right down, and on an inhale, switch. Back to the left, back to the right, last time to the left, and to the right. Float your arms down, roll your shoulders independently. And roll them the other way. Now, we're going to move into a forward bend, starting with the flat back. So place your hands above your knees, extending your hips a little bit beyond your heels, folding at the hip crease, not in the lower back. And just breathe here. Deep breath in. Exhale, lower down, however low you might wish to go. Releasing with the exhale, feeling the release of your muscles to gravity. One last deep inhale. Exhale softly, soften into it. And then place your hands above your knees. Press on your feet. Roll the spine up, drawing your shoulders up around your ears. And exhale, float them down. And take a moment to just wave in any way you might wish, your private dance. In this moment, and then bring your hands to heart center and take a bow. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Beautiful, lovely, as always. If anyone has, I think what I'd like to do is go and have a meditation, but if anyone has a question, maybe we'll hold off on questions, and we'll, if people want to stay around afterwards, we could do some sharing then. But let's sit again and take a few moments to just check in with yourself. Getting comfortable, relaxing the body, just opening to what's present. Whatever you're experiencing right now, see if you can experience it through the lens of joy. Just joy as a way of looking at your experience, even if it's a difficult one, even if there's something that's challenging or painful or uncomfortable that you're working with, is present right now. How would it be to look at that experience through the lens of joy? Is joy possible in the midst of whatever is here? So that joy becomes an orientation, really, of the heart and mind, an attitude, an intention. Consciously orienting the mind and heart towards joy, towards a kind of a fullness of heart and spirit, with the possibility of delight, wonder, possibility of possibility. With joy, there's more space for humor to arise, just to see the funny, amusing side of things. And to open to whatever our experience is. We can invite our joy to increase, to grow. And we can begin with what we're grateful for. Incline our mind towards joy. We can wish joy for others. Consciously having the intention of sending joy to others. Letting your joy go out, your wishes of joy go out to anyone. Loved ones, friends, people you care about, people who are more distant. You might send out joy to all of us here. May you be joyful. May your joy increase. And as you send it out, you might experience it coming into you as well. Giving and receiving. The Buddha said, live in joy, in love, even among those who hate. Live in joy, in health, even among the afflicted. Live in joy, in peace, even among the troubled. Look within, be still, free from fear and attachment. Know the sweet joy of the way. Share another poem by Mary Oliver. This is The Sun. Have you ever seen anything in your life more wonderful than the way the sun every evening, relaxed and easy, floats toward the horizon and into the clouds or the hills or the rumpled sea and is gone? And how it slides again out of the blackness every morning on the other side of the world like a red flower streaming upward on its heavenly oils. Say on a morning in early summer at its perfect imperial distance. And have you ever felt for anything such wild love? Do you think there is anywhere in any language a word billowing enough for the pleasure that fills you as the sun reaches out, as it warms you, as you stand there empty-handed? Or have you too turned from this world? Or have you too gone crazy for power, for things? Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your kind attention earlier with the talk and your practice today. Finish with a few announcements. I'll just share. Don't know if I have very much to share. I've got a lot of things going on, but they're mostly kind of already coming up or in the works. I'm going to be doing. I'll do a course in the fall on. I think the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So maybe put that out there. I don't have dates yet set for that. I'm going to be gone the next couple of weeks. I'm teaching a retreat down in Charlottesville next weekend, and the following weekend up in Pennsylvania. So next weekend we'll have a surprise. I'll be able to be surprised. It's part of joy. And the following week, Afosu will be teaching again. I think probably a lot of you appreciated Afosu's teachings. He's a wonderful, wonderful person, wonderful teacher. And then I'll be back. And what else I wanted to share? Yes, the dana, for those who, I think everyone knows about dana. So the tradition of dana, the practice of dana, and what a wonderful practice of generosity it is. So invite you, if you're able, to make a donation.